Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending whether you're watching us live or watching a recording. This is another session of the third Global Stop Cyberbullying Telesummit. We're already on our second week. We started October 1st and we'll end this event on October 29. And actually, if we take the opening session, this is our sixth session. So, welcome. I'm talking to you from Porto in Portugal. My name is Tito de Moraes. I'm the author of a book called Cyberbullying, a Guide for Parents and Educators that I co-wrote with Sónia Seixas and with Luís Fernandes. And this book was published in Portugal and in 2016. So welcome, Sónia, and unmute your mic because you are muted. Great.
Hello, everyone. Good night. I'm in Santarém, as usual.
Exactly. And Sónia was also the co-author of a book called Plano Bullying, How to Erase Bullying from School, which was published in Portugal, I believe, in 2012, wasn't it, Sónia?
2012, right.
2012. And Luís and Sónia also wrote Diz Não ao Bullying, Say No to Bullying, Don't Let Them Hurt You. And this was published in 2017 or 15?
No.
15, I believe.
2015.
That's right. Today we have a guest that I'll be introducing shortly. And she also co-authored this book, Bullying Perspectives, Practices and Insights. It's a book published by the Council of Europe. And for which I, Sónia, and Luís also wrote a chapter. And our guest today is coming from France. Actually, she's an American, but she's been living in France for quite some time. She's a lawyer from California, a law professor in Paris, France, and a digital safety consultant in Europe, using her European and American focus on internet technology and social media issues. She researches solutions to empower parents to guide their children in the digital age. And she's the founder of digitalparentingcoach.com, a website and community with resources and strategies for parents. Currently, she is an independent consultant for the Council of Europe, Children's Rights and Education Departments, Microsoft, Digital Safety, and E-Enfance, Child Protection Online, a French organization that she'll be talking about to us today. She's an international speaker on digital parenting and safety, and her work has been featured in BBC, France 24, FOSI, Internet Matters, and other media outlets and organizations focused on child safety online. And she was already a guest on our first summit. So welcome, Elizabeth.
It's so good to be back, Tito and Sónia. Hello.
And you're speaking from Paris, France, right?
Yes, speaking from Paris, France. And indeed, I have now lived in Europe, in France, longer than I lived in California. So I am truly European. I am truly French.
Yeah, same thing with me. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, in the USA, some years ago, not many. And I've been living most of my life in Portugal, and I'm more Portuguese actually than American. And Edith Utete is saying hello, Tito and Sónia, and also probably to Elizabeth.
How lovely.
She's following us from Zimbabwe. António João Silva says boa noite and good night. from Braga. I know he's from Braga. He's a regular with us. And Abilu Carvalho, who is also a regular with us, is following us from Vila Nova de Gaia. And he says, I like the new pictures behind Tito and Sónia. That's right, Abilu. We have new backgrounds. Unlike my usual background, I'm not in Rio Tinto. I'm in Porto, and the same with Sónia. So feel free to let us know where you are following us. So it's always nice to know where our audience is. So for tonight's session, we'll be talking about bullying and racism and online harassment. And during the pandemic, we saw an increase in online harassment and hate, fueled by racism and misinformation. How can parents and caregivers support their families during moments of racial tensions online, prevent bullying of vulnerable children and young people, and raise upstanders who can find ways to diffuse digital dramas with humor and kindness? Join us as Dr. Milovidov shares best practices and strategies used by ethnic and non-ethnic families around the world to create a true online balance. And Elizabeth, you have prepared a presentation for us, so yes. I'll bring it up and we'll ask questions as they, they flow.
Yeah, please do. Please do. And really, I only have PowerPoints because there's so many things to see this time. I really want to, tell the story. And so you can do that with images. So thank you so much, both of you, for letting me come and talk about this topic, because I don't think it's something that people are really thinking about, that parents and caregivers are thinking about racist bullying, about some of this online racism and hate and harassment that we're seeing. And Tito, you so rightly mentioned the pandemic, which has led to a lot of anti-Asian sentiment. And so I just wanted to, create some awareness about these issues. So here we go. I'm going to stop talking and start showing. And let's see, there we go. So let's start with racism. So again, I also want to make sure that any of the viewers who are watching to realize that, I am going to be showing things that are triggering, that may make you angry, and that's okay. The intent is not to hurt anyone's feelings, but just to create awareness. So this is an example of things that happen on social media websites. So this was Snapchat when they came out with a filter that was called Yellow Face, which was not cool, as you can imagine. Then this is a more recent article from last year talking about how teens, they just won't stop posting racist videos and challenges on TikTok. And, the experts were explaining why the problem continues. And a lot of it was because, children and teens and young people, they're not recognizing, they're not realizing what they are actually doing when they are just doing these types of behaviors. They think, oh, it's a joke. Oh, it's funny. Oh, the other person will understand. And then, of course,
Elizabeth,
yes.
Can you give us some background on that? What sort of racist challenges?
Oh, sure. In fact, I had a few more and I took them out because they were really offensive.
Graphic.
Yeah, very graphic. But so, for example, there were some teenagers, I believe in Texas, who came up with a TikTok video where they showed how do you make a Black person. And they put all their little recipes in. And of course, the recipes were all things that were very offensive and stereotypical and degrading insults. Okay. And the kids actually were expelled from high school after that. But I mean, things like this where they're just really, like I said, not thinking about the consequences. So then, of course, I don't have to go much further than seeing politicians, saying things like Kung Flu, which is also very, very offensive. Then again, even here in France, we saw that the pandemic has just really exposed a lot of anti-Asian hate. And a lot of this, of course, was happening online. And that's the reason why I want to stress that it's happening online, in social media, on video games, in the chat, in the YouTube comments, places that parents and children aren't necessarily thinking about. Yes, hello, Edith, I see you too.
Yeah. And also, Edith is saying, hello, Elizabeth, good to see you all. And also a guest, a friend that has been following us from Argentina, Ana Maria Martorella. Buenas noches desde Argentina. Buenas noches, Ana Maria. Gracias por estar con nosotros.
Thank you so much for being here, Ana Maria. So then I just wanted to show some more recent statistics. This is from the United States, and this is from the Anti-Defamation League, and just really showing the increase of online hate and harassment, and across the board, all of the different groups that are being targeted. I think it's pretty obvious that these are some of the typical groups that are receiving a lot of online hate. But also what's interesting is seeing where it's coming from, right? So 75% is on Facebook, and then even on other places where you wouldn't think, WhatsApp, Reddit, Twitch, etc. So again, it can happen anywhere. And I think that's just the important thing for parents to remember. I also wanted to talk just about what's happening in Europe, because I think it is so important to realize that this is not just an American thing. This is from Europol, which had just started, I want to say, which year did they start this? It was, hang on, I will tell you. This was in 2020, and it was the very first of its kind, where it was the Europol's European Counterterrorism Center, and they coordinated a European-wide action, right? And it was led by Germany, and it took place in France, Greece, Italy, Ireland, Norway, Spain, United Kingdom. All of this was to target racism and xenophobic hate speech online. Again, stressing how this is such a problem. And you're saying, okay, Elizabeth, but this is Europol. What does this have to do with my children? Well, I will tell you, because your children are seeing this in video games. It is coming up there. So, for example, here is Call of Duty, right? And so they had racist names, or toxic behavior was then removed from there. And the developers themselves say that there's so much more that needs to be done. Another important article, this came from CNN, and I really would stress, if anybody just Googles this topic, a mother's warning to about white teen sons. It was a fascinating warning where she says that her children are being groomed, and she says white teenage boys, they're being groomed to be white supremacists. They are being groomed to hate, and it starts off very small and very innocently. And so I thought that was something that a lot of parents need to know about.
That's an interesting thing, because we've seen also in the past the internet being used as a grooming tool for other extremist groups. Namely, religious groups and so forth. So that's something that it doesn't. I believe it does not happen only with white teen sons. Basically, any teen can be groomed into terrorist groups, into radical extremist religions, or political parties, or forces like that. That's something that parents really need to be aware. Social media and the platforms that children use will be used by recruiters.
Of course. Exactly, Tito. They'll be used by recruiters because they will go to the places where the children and young people are. They go to where the audiences are. So, and again, I know in my own digital parenting community that parents are not thinking about these things because this is not something that you would want to think about.
Absolutely. Edith is saying, interesting that such kind of grooming is happening. Thank you for sharing this, Elizabeth. Because we usually, when we talk about grooming, we tend to think about sexual grooming online. Yeah. And it's a process. It's not only regarding sexual behavior.
Exactly. It's anything to pull these children and take their expectations and values and to groom them into something else and something vulnerable. So I also wanted to show innocent games like Roblox, which is a fantastic gaming platform. I know, Tito, you know Laura Higgins, who's running up the digital civility. They're doing a great job of moderating as much as they can, but because it is user created games and user created content, you can find extremist views and racism and all sorts of things. So here on the screen, you can see the top right, there is white drinking fountain and a colored drinking fountain. And then this is for the Ku Klux Klan rally that evening. And then of course you can look this up yourself, just go online and you can see these types of things. But my point here is, imagine that you're 9 years old playing Roblox and you stumble onto something like this. You're not quite sure how to respond. What does this mean? Are you allowed to go play this, or etc.? So they're just games that are out there. I also thought it was important to show Fortnite, another fantastic game. This was last year after the murder of George Floyd. Is that Fortnite then removed police cars from Epic removed police cars from the game, and they did this because they didn't want players getting into police cars, running over people, etc., and just extending it further. So it's really amazing how current events can play out in these games as well. Things that we see that our children are seeing.
Yeah, again, that's really a surprise, because we think police cars is something that shouldn't be banned from an online game, but it all depends on the use you give to it.
Exactly. Everything Amazing. Can be a weapon or a tool, right?
Yeah.
And so this is a bit older. So this is from 2018, and Discord has cleaned up a lot. Again, I want to make sure that all the social media fans and online gamers realize I'm not calling out these companies for these places. It's not them. It is the users who are ruining the digital environment. So, they're people who are communicating with each other, and they need a safe space to do that, and Discord can provide that. Again, this is another game, something that I know that parents aren't thinking about, and I doubt that you or Sónia have even thought about this, but that little gesture is, it's not a cool one, and it has been something that's associated with white supremacy, and usually they were, with the guns, it was because they were saying, you could shoot so well that you could shoot right through there, etc., but it's been taken over. So you can see things like this. And again, if you don't know, then I'm trying to explain to you what's happening here. Again, another report by the Anti-Defamation League talking about what's happening in online games. And again, on the right-hand column, you can see just all the listing, the percentages of people and the groups who are receiving online harassment. And of course, you can imagine 41% female because they're playing video games where, as well, and where boys and men are not always happy with that, and so they are harassing them. And then you can imagine if you're mixing that up, if you are a Black female who happens to be a lesbian, you can just imagine how horrible that gaming experience is going to be for you. So again, this is just to show you what's inside, because it is really interesting to see that we do talk about some of the positive social experiences, but I mean, these are things that people aren't thinking about. And this goes a bit beyond the bullying, but I do think it's important to mention things like swatting. Again, swatting is something that no parent is ever thinking about, and yet you read about it in the headlines. It does happen. Swatting is when the kids are playing video games and they think it's funny to call the police and to describe a criminal action that is so serious that the police send the SWAT team over to that other person's house. And in the United States, it has resulted in deaths. Yeah. So I also, always want to make sure to be positive about these things, to talk about how it's a process, right? And that, we can all sit here and say, okay, but I'm colorblind and I'm not a racist. And it's like, we all have our issues. So let's just, not think of it that way. Let's think about how we can be the role models. Let's think about how we can have conversations about racism, about online hate, about racist bullying. And when I say racist, I'm talking for everything, right? Not just ethnic, but for religious reasons, everything. Seeking out diversity, right? So that way our children can see other people who don't necessarily look like us, who sound like us, and that we can always use books and movies and games to have some of these great conversations, and looking at social media accounts, looking at finding some of the social media accounts that are really for good. You can kind of counterbalance a lot of what we see. And so I don't want to leave us with a bunch of negatives, right? I do want to mention that there are some positives.
Before we go into the positives, can I ask you, and because you're an American living in France,
yes,
do you see any major differences in this area between the States and Europe?
Oh, Tito, you're going to get me in trouble, aren't you?
That was not my intention, I promise.
Well, I will just...
Because I can tell you what I think.
Okay.
And that will... it will forgive you for any... okay, you just say, no, Tito said it, I agree with him, or I don't.
well, no, I can tell you that as a Black American here in Europe, my experience is different because I am American. And
that's interesting.
Yes. And so that's why I don't always experience racism per se, whereas if I were from an African country, I think that I would. And so, for example, with my children who are very light-skinned, and sometimes I've been pushing a stroller when they were younger, and I had people think that I was from a former French colony, Cameroon, Senegal, Ivory Coast. And as soon as they heard me say hello with my French American accent in French, it was, oh, she's American. And the conversation changed. So there's something happening.
My question was more, and I can tell you an episode which first time I experienced segregation actually based on ethnic, basically.
What happened?
But I asked you this question because I think the United States is more polarized than Europe, and in questions regarding racism and so forth, that the situation in the US, at least to my eyes, looks more extreme, more polarized, and more violent than it does in Europe. And that's my question was to ask you if you also have that view or not.
Again, Tito, I would say it depends, because it depends on what country you're in and what color skin you're wearing in that country. There are some European countries where I might be a little bit scared to go, or when I see the political power, who they are and what they represent, that's frightening, which is what we saw in the United States just the past few years. So I think that is what is really affecting. It really is top down, where we see things happening, and which is, again, the reason why I showed the quote with Trump, because as politicians lead and say these types of comments, and they're out in social media, of course, people see them, and young people and teenagers and kids, and think that it's okay to speak that way.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. It's not. If the president does speak that way, if high officials speak that way, so I can't.
Exactly.
The experience I would like to tell you is I grew up in Africa under colonial Portuguese rule. So I saw segregation, even if in Mozambique it was not, we didn't have apartheid, fortunately, but there was segregation.
Of course.
Children of color were not allowed in school in the same percentages, were not given the same opportunities in the same percentages that the white population was. In a class of 25 students, I would have one colleague either African or Indian. Indians were more or less tolerated. So I experienced seeing segregation. And then in 1777, I visited Sweden for the first time. And I was shocked to be called a black-haired in the streets. And black-haired pronounced as an insult.
Wow.
And that for me was a shock. So it was humbling because to see what other people from other ethnic or racial backgrounds would experience every day. So for me, it was an humbling experience, and I'm sure that the same happens online. But before we go to the positives,
yes.
Billy is saying that the issue of racism, but after all, there is only one human race. Teaching that there are races is a form of racism. Isn't teaching that there is a human race the solution?
I see we have a philosopher.
I think that the race is something that men invented.
Yeah.
And because if we're going to look, we are all humans. There are no races. I tend to agree with Billy.
But what's interesting, Tito, there is that your example that you gave with the black hair, it reminded me of, and I'm sure you both will remember this, that psychology experiment where they take a classroom of students and they tell them the blue-eyed ones are the guards and the brown eyes are this, and then they I forget. Yes. Yeah, and
that's amazing. That experience is absolutely amazing, and there is a video on YouTube that people can actually see it. I don't recall the name of the scientist, but I saw she went to an opera show.
It was in the 70s, I think.
Yeah, the experience was in the 70s.
Video.
Yeah. But I'll share it in the comments.
You're going to have to find it, Tito, because for me that's the perfect example of what the problem is, and it doesn't matter if we talk about hair color or skin color.
Absolutely.
People will find a reason to hate someone else because they're different.
And there is also another very sad video, I think, which is children of color.
Jane Elliott. It was Jane Elliott.
I think so. I'm going to make a note, otherwise
Jane Elliott.
That was very powerful.
Are given a doll, a white doll and a black doll.
Yes.
And they are asked a series of questions regarding who is the good doll and who's the bad doll, who's the smart and whatnot. And it's saddened it's hard to see that video because it shows how prejudiced children can become from a very, very early age.
Yeah, for sure.
And we teach them in that sense.
Yeah, we teach them, but it also, I mean, I know that we're getting off topic here, but I'll bring it right back, is that we teach them this as well, even with their online experience, by who they're seeing, who are the heroes online, who are the bad guys online. We teach and reinforce this type of racism and stereotypes. And so, it's a process, and that's why I said it. So then I'll be positive, and I'll just show one or two examples to cheer us up. Is that let's see, here we go. So just showing how social media can be used for good. So this was Miss Singapore, who was doing her oh my goodness, it was a beauty pageant, doing the costume show, and it said "Stop Asian Hate," and of course this was shared so many places. Then again, there's a mural that's painted, and this is also from a social media feed. So these types of things are out there and going viral, and where people are able to use social media for good and to spread awareness. So I also obviously wanted to mention just online support for online racism. I think it's really important for your European audience to remember Better Internet for Kids, where they can go on the website, they can find helplines to actually call in and get assistance. And if the helpline cannot help you with a specific issue, they will be able to direct you to somebody who can. Here in France, I support I.S.P.A, which is the French Child Online Protection. And it's just really important for everyone to realize that you're not bothering people when you call. That's what we're here for. We want to help and support. And of course, also my own community, where I have Tito there and also Edith inside. And, we're just all trying to support each other and to support parents. So I think that's it for my slides. Yes, it is. And let me see. Are you gonna click me out, Tito?
Yeah.
Because don't let me do it myself.
Okay. No, it's fine. Let me just, you mentioned I.S.P.A, and I would love to have you speak a bit more about I.S.P.A, the work they do and whatnot.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I.S.P.A, as I said, they're the French Child Online Protection Association. And right now, they also operate the only national number against cyberbullying, which is 3018. It used to be called Net Écoute, but now it is 3018. And you can call, you can send a chat message, you can you send a WhatsApp message, whatever you need to get assistance, whether it is cyber harassment, revenge porn, I don't know, scams, technical issues, etc. So, and again, I stress this is I.S.P.A here in France. Like you can see the posters behind me, but they also have the same abilities in different 26 other European countries.
Right, because that's a network of hotlines which I.S.P.A belongs to. We also have in Portugal, it's called Linha Internet Segura.
Yeah. And Centro Seguro as well. Yeah. You have the helpline and the hotline.
The Centro Internet Segura hosts the hotline, which is called Linha Internet Segura. This is also the helpline. So we have them on both of them. Sónia, can you lead the questions as I publish the links regarding I.S.P.A that
yes,
Elizabeth sent?
Yes.
And also the audience, feel free. If you have any questions regarding the presentation that Elizabeth provided us, feel free to ask.
Yeah, I was going to say, and most importantly is just to realize, let's have the conversation, create that awareness. I know that it's scary and that people don't want to think about it, but we can do it. Go ahead, Sónia, let's talk.
Well, I think we could start by your definition of racist cyberbullying. It's a specific type of racism, right?
Yes. So when we're talking,
what is your definition?
My definition, for racist, this is really what we're saying for anything, right? For when we're calling out and threatening, intimidating, harassing people because of race, religion, the food they eat, the clothes they wear, all of these things can for me fall under racist bullying. Not just color. No, I put everything in there.
And can you give us some strategies that parents and caregivers can provide their children to help to reduce online harassment and bullying?
Yeah. Well, this is the exact same as, even though it is a different type, right? Because there's so many types of bullying behaviors, right? I wouldn't sit there and say this is so far away and so extreme. It's the same sort of thing where parents can sit there and oh, is that a dog?
That was on my side. So
okay. where I think that parents are able to support their children by talking about social and emotional learning, by teaching them empathy, telling their children to be empathetic. I'm trying to think what else. These talking to them, my goodness, talking to them about what bullying is, and actually, the fact that we're saying bullying, and sometimes they say banter, or just these kind of jokes that aren't very funny. And sometimes it seems like a lot of racist jokes are the things that, are what people pass on, and they think that it's humorous. And of course it's not. I also think that, just by really talking, again, talking is always my big point here, about having conversations with our children about, what they're doing online, some of the positive things that they like, some of the not so positive things. It's just staying involved. And how do you think I knew about Roblox, and it could take the screenshots? I mean, these are my boys who are telling me. I'm not always playing Roblox. I do play occasionally, but I'm not always in there doing that. It's my children who tell me, and this is the best way to, talk to them and prepare them after you see something like this, and to explain to them what's happened, and help them engage in critical thinking.
Interesting. One question that came up to my mind when I saw the slide in which you showed that Snapchat had introduced a filter that in a way mocked of Asian origin people.
Yes.
A friend of mine wrote a book for children regarding events on Portuguese history. And the book is written in a way that's very appropriate for children, with cartoons and so forth. And he asked a famous person locally to write the preface for the book. And the person ended up refusing because some of the illustrations were, for instance, African people were portrayed with large lips, and so forth. And he said, yes, but the author, the cartoonist, is African.
Wow.
So the question is, and it's something that sometimes is debated. Are we, in a way, driving what they call the political correct speech in such a way that, for instance, humorous sketches or skits like Monty Python's would be unacceptable today?
That's a tough question. Yeah, I understand really when people talk about political correctness and how we do so much where we're dancing around and we try to include everything, everyone, every characteristic possible. But I just also think that sometimes if you just sit back and think, is this going to hurt someone's feelings? That's just pretty much the basic level of where we're talking to children and trying to get them to understand, well, if someone said that about you, how would you feel? If someone drew that about you, how would you feel? So I think that your illustration is brilliant, because the author, the cartoonist himself, was African. But then again, Tito, there are also, rappers who say and use ethnic slurs, and I still don't want to hear those from anybody else. So it's a tough act, but I think,
and we can also say that an African cartoonist drew that way because he was brought up in a Western civilization under those not prototypes, but under those conceptions, let's call them like that. The word is escaping me.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that so much of this, of what we're seeing, and how we've just made this conversation so much larger, is just, this is what's happening right now in our world. And as so much of this goes online, whether we're talking about, I don't know, far right people in Austria or in the Nordics or whatever, reverberates, and it has larger echoes, and it has larger reach. And I think this is what parents and caregivers really need to understand, is that when you hand a smartphone and a video game and everything else over to a young person, you are really opening them up, not just to, you know, what parents are typically thinking of with stranger danger, but also with political ideology that is quite interesting and could be harmful. So even though, again, I'm hearing Tito in my head thinking, but isn't it good to have this exchange of to see what's out there? And it's like, yes, of course it is. But, you know, I think we have to also have to meet children where they are at their age, what's appropriate, what they can understand. You know, the three of us having a conversation about racism and going further and looking at other examples. I mean, that's one thing, but, you know, 9-year-olds or 13-year-olds, 16-year-olds, these types of things. I don't know. And I see you've got a question.
Yes, Christiane Miranda. Hi, Christiane. Nice to have you with us. She's asking, how can we make young people aware that games encourage this type of behavior, bullying, racism? They tend not to believe it. They think it will never happen to them. They love to play so much and don't see themselves doing that.
Yeah. This is when, Christiane, you're not going to like my answer, because I'm going to say you have to play with them. You have to play some of the games, because that way you can make it a teachable moment. When you see something that is, you know, a little bullying behavior or a little racist banter or a joke, you can point that out to them, so that way they will know what the example is. Because one of the things that I've seen with my own children as well, is the same sort of desensitization, if I can say that, I'm making up words, where they become desensitized because they see it so much. Just like, you know, young boys with, and young girls as well, with any sort of sexualized content. They see it so much that it just becomes banal. It just becomes, oh, it's just another day. I just saw that, oh, that popped up. And so this is what's also happening with violent content, with racist content. And I think this is more, for me, the danger, that they just become so used to it. They don't even think, Christiane, to tell you about it, because they see it all the time. It's just, you know, oh, that's just how we talk in the game.
And another thing that's interesting, it also depends on the type of games that you allow your children to play. And one of the things that we're seeing is that children, you know, at very young age are playing games that are classified, registered, or whatever, to ages way above their age. Yeah. And also, not only that, so the rating of the game, the age rating, the content rating is something that the parents need to be aware of. But not only that, also the type of games that children play. For instance, you mentioned Fortnite, you mentioned Roblox, can also mention Minecraft. For instance, Minecraft and Roblox are good games, are educational games. So they have
value
things, value about them, but that doesn't prevent people from using it in a bad way, as you have illustrated with Roblox, and that I'm sure will happen in other platforms besides Roblox.
Yes, and in fact, even with Roblox, they also had the Christchurch event, where people kept recreating those communities in Roblox, and it's just like, come on, what are you doing? But I think that this is something that parents also need to remember, is that bad actors will show up anywhere. And so it's not a matter of shutting down Roblox or Minecraft or Fortnite. That's not going to work. And even if you shut down your child's Fortnite account, they're still going to watch on their friends when they get to school. So it's not that. It is really about continuing these conversations so that they know where you stand, what your beliefs are, how you expect them to behave when they see this.
Don't you think also putting pressure on the tech companies that produce those games, that they have to invest more in moderation, they have to act quicker, they have to have the tools that allow people to report those situations, and they have to invest more on safety and trust and awareness. they also have to help us educate parents. So the pressure cannot only be put on parents. We need to put some pressure also on the industry, don't you think?
I completely agree, Tito. But the problem for me is that we've been at this for how long now? At least for me, I've been in this area 10 years. I've known you, I think, 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
And what have we seen? We've seen mistake after mistake. Oh, we're sorry, we'll fix it. We've seen governments coming in and saying, oh, we should probably regulate this. Let's start something. And then nothing gets done. And parents are still waiting. So I think that while we wait for the tech companies to add more moderators, to figure out different ways of really fixing this, and while we wait for governments to actually understand how to get laws passed and to really, I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of the Senate hearings or different things like that. And it makes you wonder, do they understand how the technology works? Do they have a Facebook account? Do they have an Instagram account, a TikTok account, a Snapchat account? I think that there's a disconnect there. And until we're on equal playing ground with government, with tech companies, with schools even, my goodness, poor schools, poor teachers, educators, they must be screaming. In the United States, they have a challenge, slap a teacher challenge. I mean, what's going on with that, right? And it's just, there's all these types of things where until we have a real solution, I don't want to put the burden on parents, but I feel like it's there anyway. And so let's try to do something to raise our children to be digital citizens, to be socially and emotionally kind with others until tech and governments and schools can do something else. It's on us, unfortunately. There are children.
Yeah. Let's get back to talk about cyberbullying.
Yeah. Yes, we can.
And how can we teach children to be upstanders when they see, the racist comments, harassment, or bullying that we've been talking about? Can we use the same strategies for bullying and cyberbullying?
For sure. I always think that just because we're talking about, bullying that's usually in the schoolyard, and then cyberbullying, which is, of course, can happen on anything, right? On any device. I think it's really important that parents remember that this is not just, getting mean emails. This can be anything from, YouTube comments to repeated WhatsApp messages, Snapchat messages, etc. I think that overall that we have to sit there and we can teach our children to be upstanders for all of these types of activities by first, if they see something happening to someone online, to let that person know that they're not alone. If there's any way, if you could just send them a smiley emoji or something to let them know that you're there. I always personally use humor and jokes to kind of shift the focus, to divert attention from the situation. Sometimes for children, it might just be easier, children, young people, teens, adults, even just to leave the conversation, leave the situation, get out of the chat, and then figure out what you can do afterwards. But I think, again, the most important thing is for parents to have these conversations beforehand, to let them know that, this could happen. What are we going to do? It's the same sort of training that we would do with our children when we would take them to the park. We would say, okay, if you get lost, this is what you do. Or, when you cross the street, this is how we're going to do that. We would give them tips and strategies before something happened. And I think we can do a lot of that online as well, by just letting them know that we're there and to come and speak to us. And by the way, Tito, I have used your envelope example so many times, so many places. So I think that's really like one of the best strategies that I think, especially for older parents of older children. And I think that's a great get out of a cyberbullying experience idea and tip.
Yep. For teens particularly, I would believe.
Yes.
Yep. So anyone who has a question, please come forward and feel free to ask. Elizabeth will be with us for some more 10 minutes, so we have time for an additional question.
I'm sure that somebody's thinking, well, what's the envelope example, Tito? Tell them the envelope example.
Okay.
I set you up for it.
Okay. No, basically the envelope example is a strategy that we can use to make sure that our kids come to us when they feel that they are in trouble. And by being in trouble, it can be because of cyberbullying example. It can also be because of online grooming. It can be because they did something that they shouldn't. One of the things that usually sexual predators know and criminals know is that if they uh, make you do something that is sociable, unacceptable, or that is even illegal, the chances of you reporting something that was done to you decreases drastically. So that's something that usually criminals use to make sure that children won't say that they are being abused, that they aren't being bullied, groomed, and so forth. And it's hard to, we talk about keeping the lines of communication open with our children. Is a phrase that can mean many things, but it's not palpable. It's nothing concrete. And the example of the envelope is something concrete, and it's in this case is a parent that wrote a note to their daughters, basically saying if and put the note in their drawer, and said if you someday you feel that you are trapped in trouble and that you need help, take this note, bring it to me, and as a sign that my obligation is to help you, not to get stressed and not to panic and shout, but to help you. And I sugarcoat it a little bit because you can put that note inside a colorful envelope that will stand out in a drawer. It can be pink, yellow, blue, whatever, a bright color. And if your daughter or son will see it and will read it, maybe they'll come to you, say, what's all this about? And it's an opportunity to talk about that. If they don't, perhaps the day if they are in trouble, they'll come to you for help, because that's the main thing, is that they come to us for help, and that we are there to help them, not to blame them for whatever they done, or even because most of the times it won't be something that they have done, but something that was done to them. So I'm glad that example, I usually use it in a slide.
I love
It's
it.
more colorful and more impactful. And you're naughty, because you caught me off guard, and I wasn't expecting that one. So I was doing some exercise to remember that. But I'm glad
I love
that
it.
helped
I
you.
love it. Yes.
So we still have some time. And another question is, how can we address racist bullying and cyberbullying in a school context?
Yeah, so the school context, I mean, this is the idea too, where parents are going in and they're doing what they can to talk to schools to make sure that that the school is building a culture that's inclusive, that values diversity, and just doesn't tolerate bullying of any kind. And I think that I think that most schools are going to say, of course, we don't tolerate bullying. But I think that really we have to, keep those conversations going, have parents, checking in and asking and saying, can we have a bullying prevention week? Can we get a bullying bench? I mean, I love the idea of a bullying bench or a bullying corner. Actually, it shouldn't be called bullying, but you know what I mean, the kindness bench. Or the buddy bench. Yes, thank you.
That's a lovely idea.
It
That's
really
a
is.
great idea.
I love it. And I know somebody's thinking, well, what's that idea? Sonia, tell them, what's the buddy bench? Because I know someone's wondering, what is it?
No, it's a so simple idea. We have a bench in the play yard, and kids can color them with so many colors, and with a note writing down something like "I'm alone," and it's a buddy bench. And all kids know that when they feel stressed, alone, with fear, isolated, they can sit there in that buddy bench, and all school know that that kid needs help or need to be
Someone to play with.
integrated in a group, or doesn't have anyone to play, to talk.
Yeah.
So we can teach the kids that when someone is sitting there, we must go there and help them and ask him what the worries, what he needs. So it's a great idea, and it's so simple. We just put
Absolutely.
that, and we teach the kids what's the main function of that buddy bench.
Yeah, and teaching them kindness. I would just love it if we could find a way to make an online buddy bench, you know, where you could find online, and there's a place where you could be, and someone will come and talk to you, and be your buddy.
Online buddy bench. It's a great idea.
That's an interesting idea, and I think it would be
That's
easy
an interesting
to
idea. That makes me think. I was thinking about something that you said earlier, Tito and Elizabeth. We must teach kids and make them reflect. How would that action make me feel? How would you feel if someone did that to you? And I was thinking that in reality we have so different sensitivities. The same behavior doesn't make me feel the same way that a friend of mine. So when we are truly empathetic, we should think about how he would feel, not how I would feel. It's a bit different. We have a saying, don't make to others what you wouldn't like they do to yourself.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I think it would be a bit different. Don't make to him what you know he doesn't like. Because you could like, but he doesn't.
Oh,
So
I like that.
for me, that's the true
regarding
empathy.
the idea of
it.
the buddy bench is something that can also be used on school lunchrooms, because usually that's a place where some pupils are targets of exclusion. So children always don't have anyone to have lunch with them. They can also have not a buddy bunch, but a buddy table, for instance. Or exactly, so that they would be a sign that that person needs somebody to sit with them for lunch, have company for lunch. Ana Maria Martorella is saying, thank you for your interesting contributions. Thank you, Ana Maria, for being with us all the way from Argentina. And Nabilu Carvalho is saying, a current issue that the party nationalist politics makes more complicated, and we see countries with governments that penalize the situation. Are the laws changing?
Our philosopher is back, and now he's a lawyer.
Bilio.
Oh, Bilio, that one's huge. I'm just going to stick with my online cyberbullying.
That question, Abilio, will have to be for another lawyer that we will have with us in another session. It comes to mind one from Brazil shortly.
Oh, perfect.
Pedro Lipe, and who will give us an outline of the law in Brazil. So that maybe is a good question for him. Okay, we're reaching the hour, and as usual, we end asking our guests to leave us with a tip, a recommendation, or an idea that can help that parents, teachers, educators can put in practice once they leave this session. And I'm going to ask you to think a minute or two about it as I introduce tomorrow's session, and then I'll come back to you.
Great, gives me time to think.
Exactly. And I promise it won't be a philosophical question,
Okay.
because it was asked already. So tomorrow we'll have two guests from Greece. Today I was rehearsing the name for the first guest, which is Pichi Protopsaltis. I hope I have got it right. And also Stefanos Alevizos. They will be talking about the European Anti-Bullying Network and its actions to tackle cyberbullying. That will be tomorrow evening, 9:30 p.m. Poor guys, they will be 11:30 p.m. in Greece. So they'll go to bed late tomorrow. But the worst was our guest from Australia that was up at 7:30 p.m. Poor Lucy. But it was a great session. I'm glad we had with us. The European Anti-Bullying Network will be also presented, and we'll be learning more about them tomorrow. Don't miss it, 9:30 p.m. It seems that we have another question. No, it's not a question. It's António João Silva saying, great session. Thank you all. Thank you, António João, for being with us. And the mic is yours, Elizabeth.
My goodness. Well, I think I think it's a difficult question, because when we're talking about bullying and younger people, of course, I'm going to say, just keep those conversations going, because this way we can, talk with them, we can support them. And I know that we don't always have time, but you do, because you're talking with your children with dinner and walking them to school, etc. It's the older teens and young people. I think that's a bit trickier, because they don't always want to talk with us. And so I think you have to make sure that they have a trusted person that they know that they can go to. And I think that that's what it's all about. It's about trust here. Trust and communication. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
Have a trusted person, and that can be a teacher,
yes,
or a staff at school,
or an older sibling, a cousin,
exactly,
a brother,
home.
a brother. Yeah.
Very interesting. Elizabeth, thank you very much for being
My
with
pleasure,
us and
Tito,
accepting
Sónia.
our invitation.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Again.
Again, I'll be back next year.
Yep. Yes. So, and to all of you that have been following this session, thank you for being on that side. Don't forget, tomorrow, 9:30, we'll be back. Bye, Elizabeth. Thank you very much for being with us.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.